In Alabama, a series of deadly assaults shocks the community and frustrates police. All the killers leave behind are the dead and fleeting images on surveillance videotape. Local police and federal agents follow the killer's trail up and down the eastern seaboard. The shadowy fugitives keep running, but the FBI will not give up the chase.
Surveillance video is often the most precise witness to a crime. Its images can speak for victims when they are unable. After 3 brutal murders were caught on tape in Alabama, the suspects fled the area. They had an arsenal of stolen weapons and swore they wouldn't be taken alive. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Racing across several states, the fugitives tried to elude the FBI, and agents hoped to capture them without more bloodshed.
In the 1990s, Birmingham, Alabama saw a drop in both its population and its crime rate. But even in the safest cities, killers can strike. On May 18th, 1996, a customer at a gas station discovered a body. Birmingham police responded to the 911 call. Crime scene investigators determined the victim, the station cashier, had been shot to death. He was the only employee on duty that day. The customer hadn't seen what happened to him. A trail of blood led back into the store and behind the counter. More blood there indicated the cashier lay briefly on the floor before going outside, perhaps hoping for help. He barely made it to the parking lot. Police first suspected a robbery shooting, but money was left on the counter, and the cash register had not been emptied. No fingerprints pointed toward a suspect, and no witnesses had seen anything. Investigators retrieved the store's security videotape and sent it to the police lab. The tape had degraded because it had been reused many times in the recorder. So the footage of the crime was blurry and few details could be seen. Police technicians tried to clean up the image electronically for detectives. The enhanced tape gave investigators a better look at the crime. It confirmed what the crime scene clues suggested. A lone customer shot the cashier, even though the employee was complying with his demands. It seemed he killed without reason. Technicians made video captures of individual frames and tried to enhance them in order to see the face of the perpetrator or any identifying characteristics.
Pictures aren't great.
Birmingham police hoped to identify the suspect from the stills. Checking mugshots, they could not find a match. Detectives interviewed friends and relatives of the victim, trying to find some lead on the senseless murder. No one recognized the killer or knew who might want the cashier dead.
Still picture. Now they're a little fuzzy. Let me start out here.
Without any other evidence, the investigation stalled. 2 months later, and 20 miles south of Birmingham, a call came into the sheriff's office in Shelby County, Alabama. Sheriff James Jones received the report of 2 people downed at a pawn shop.
When we got the phone call, it really wasn't clear to us exactly what had happened. We had reason to believe that lives had been lost in the building. It happened so rarely in our county that I really was surprised when I got on the scene.
EMTs determined the pawn shop owner had died from multiple gunshots. A female employee was in critical condition with a gunshot wound to her head.
All other cars, when you're outside, make sure they...
The sheriff ordered deputies to stop any suspicious vehicles in the area.
We really didn't know what we were looking for at this point. But we was in hopes that our people would be sharp enough if they saw something that was out of place that they would be able to recognize that, stop that vehicle, and perhaps give us some leads from it.
Stabilizing her as much as they could in the field, the paramedics prepared the woman for the helicopter ride to the hospital. Authorities determined more than $2,300 in cash and jewelry was missing. And the gun cases had been nearly emptied. Since the pawn shop had frequent customers, it wasn't difficult for crime scene technicians to lift hundreds of latent fingerprints. Connecting one of them to the crime might be impossible. The lead investigator was Shelby County Sergeant Michael DeHart.
There was really a lot of evidence processing to be done, fingerprint dusting, so on, but we didn't find anything definitive as a result of that. The one thing that we did find that we did have were shell casings that were left at the scene.
The murder weapon was a .380 automatic handgun.
At the time, we didn't know if this was a one-time event that had occurred or if this was a part of a larger series of events.
The in-store shooting was similar to the earlier gas station murder, but this crime occurred during a robbery. Detectives checked for the shop's security video. Then they remembered something.
I was talking to the owner a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about putting a dummy machine in. He was talking about putting a real one over in this area.
Sergeant Russell Yawn found the other machine in the actual surveillance videotape.
The second, or the real VCR, continued to operate even after they took and unplugged and removed the tape from the dummy VCR. And it continued to record even until the time that I pushed the eject button.
And it's showing...
The videotape showed 2 young men entering the store at 3:23 p.m.
Yes, it does.
They cornered the shop owner, forcing him behind the counter with the female employee.
Look, there's a red truck.
Deputies spotted a red pickup truck barely visible outside the shop.
There's the red pickup right there.
It might be the getaway vehicle. The suspects looted the pawn shop for 13 minutes while the employees watched.
Good. We need to get this...
They then shot the hostages, point blank.
I'll go ahead and collect this.
We saw nothing that told us that these 2 victims resisted or attempted to resist. They were very compliant. And I'm sure they did that with the hopes that they would live. But instead, their life was taken by execution style. And that was very disturbing to see that.
What I don't understand is, this is just garbage.
Sergeant Yawn and his partner, Sergeant Donald King, found more evidence near the spot where the victims had been killed.
As we were doing our search at the pawn shop, we saw a small pile of garbage in behind the counter, and we noted it at the time. Why was the garbage there? There was no garbage can. It really didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. There was also some metal filings on the floor mixed in with the trash.
The filings likely came from a key-making machine installed on the counter. Detectives collected them for later examination. They believe the killers took the garbage can, but they didn't know why. Federal law requires that anyone buying or selling firearms must keep records of the transactions.
All the guns that were in here that were for sale.
Detectives asked another employee to bring up the store's weapons manifest, comparing it to the guns still in the shop.
Yeah, I think that's,
They realized the suspects took an entire arsenal.
yeah, I think that's it.
There were 32 stolen weapons in the hands of vicious killers.
We was very disturbed about what else would they do, what were they doing now, and what would they do again in the future.
Because of the potential for more violence by the heavily armed killers, sheriff's detectives immediately contacted the Shelby County District Attorney's Office. Prosecutor Randy Hillman joined the investigation.
We like to be in on the front end of any investigation. It makes things a lot easier for us. It makes things a lot easier for the police officers working the scene as well.
The surveillance videotape was the best evidence investigators had to find the killers. It showed the suspects carry out many of the stolen items in a guitar case. One of them shot both the shop owner and the employee. At one point, his gun jammed. Almost mechanically, he cleared and reloaded, and then kept firing. The two suspects got into the waiting red pickup, both on the passenger side. There must have been a driver, a third suspect. Technicians made photos from video captures, but the quality was poor.
We had photographs of these individuals actually doing the execution. We had a partial photograph of the vehicle that they were in, but we didn't know who they were. And the level of violence here was critical to us. I mean, we had to stop these guys before it happened again.
Less than 8 hours after the shooting, investigators learned the pawn shop employee died in the hospital. Now there were 2 innocent murder victims. Technicians at the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences examined the bullet fragments and casings found at the pawn shop. They compared them to those used in other area shootings, including the one at the Birmingham gas station, to see if the same gun was used. But the pawn shop bullets did not match any others. Still, investigators thought the 2 crimes might be related. They turned to the public for help.
We were able to distribute still photographs to the local media in the area, and we enlisted their assistance in getting the pictures out there to the public and to request assistance in identifying the perpetrators of these crimes.
They kept several aspects of the crime secret to help identify more reliable
What's the address
leads.
on Commerce Street? Okay.
The media exposure generated dozens of calls.
Okay. How many guys were there?
One caller said that while driving in Birmingham, he saw 2 men fitting the description of the pawn shop killers. They were carrying guns and a guitar case from a red pickup into a house.
Okay.
The detail of the guitar case had been withheld from the public.
Okay, great.
The caller said he knew the men, but only by their street names,
Okay.
Turkey and Maine.
Hey, Mike, we just got some...
Shelby County detectives took the information to Birmingham police.
Got an informant calling with 2 guys loading up...
The Metro Department had a database on street names.
Teams about 6...
Turkey was an alias for 16-year-old Marcus Presley. He resembled the shooter in the pawn shop murders. Maine was 18-year-old LaSamuel Gamble. He resembled the second pawn shop robber. The 2 had long juvenile records.
go into the areas where the information indicates.
Through court documents, they learned where Gamble lived.
We knew that the people that we were looking for were very dangerous men. They had killed before. We were afraid that they would kill again. And so when we undertook these searches, we wanted to use every safety precaution available to us. So we used tactical, dynamic entries into the residences that we searched.
Sheriff's have a search warrant!
The arrest team cleared the house where Gamble had been living. No one was home.
Nobody in the house?
Nobody?
A pair of cold-blooded killers with an arsenal of stolen weapons remained on the loose.
Everybody's inside. We'll set up the perimeter.
Thank you. Don't see any movement?
On July 28, 1996, Alabama investigators searched for Marcus Presley, LaSamuel Gamble, and a third suspect believed to be involved in a double murder at a pawn shop. A tactical arrest team entered the house where suspect Gamble lived, but they found no one there. Armed with a warrant, detectives searched the house. Shelby County Sergeant Russell Young recovered evidence that directly linked the suspect to the pawn shop murders.
During the search, we found the videotape that came from the dummy VCR. It was destroyed, the case was cracked and broken, the tape pulled from the housing, and it indicated to us that they were aware that they were being recorded, and they had the presence of mind to stop and try to remove or eliminate all evidence of their crime.
They also found an empty guitar case. It appeared to be the one taken from the pawn shop. Sergeant Donald King found more evidence in the kitchen.
We were able to find a garbage can, and in the bottom of it had some labels, some price tags and so forth from some of the guns and some of the jewelry from the pawn shop. And it also contained some of the same metal shavings that we were able to tie back to the robbery scene.
Sergeant Michael DeHart was frustrated that they didn't find any of the 32 stolen weapons.
At the time that we did the search, we knew that 3 people were involved, but the third person we didn't know. When we did the search at the residence, we found a paycheck stub in a coat pocket that had the name Stephen McKenzie on it from a business in the Boston area. So paycheck stub.
Perhaps McKenzie was the third suspect who drove the getaway vehicle.
Dated fairly recently.
He had no local address, but neighbors said he was a friend of Gamble and Presley. Court records listed Marcus Presley as living with his grandmother.
There's nothing here that can directly be tied to the pawn shop.
Investigators searched that house too, but found nothing there that related to the crime.
That's 10-4, it's 1230 3rd Avenue West.
Presley's grandmother arrived home as they were executing the search warrant.
Yes, ma'am. We got a search warrant to search this residence.
Can I go in the house?
Not right now. We're doing an investigation of a robbery, but you can speak to these 2 people right here.
Ma'am, I'm Chris Curry with Shelby County Sheriff's Office. Do you
Detective showed her video captures from the robbery.
Tell me if you recognize anyone. 2 people.
She admitted one of the men looked like her grandson.
Picture, if you would, and help us and tell me if you recognize anyone.
She had tried her best to raise Marcus, but he got involved with drugs and gangs and had been in trouble ever since.
Thank you very much. You've been very helpful. But again, I apologize for the inconvenience.
She said he would disappear for weeks at a time.
But it will take him a few more minutes to finish.
She was devastated to learn that now he was a murder
You
suspect.
are certainly welcome to sit on the porch if you like.
The suspect's apparently constant movement troubled prosecutor Randy Hillman.
They were young, they were mobile, they didn't have any home base that they operated out of like normal people have a home that they go to and from. They had several different residences that they would frequent.
Detectives canvassed the neighborhood where Gamble and Presley hung out, interviewing anyone who might know the suspects. Several people in the neighborhood said that lately, Gamble and Presley had been flashing jewelry and giving away guns to members of their street gang. Some said they heard the suspects were still in the area and offered addresses where the young men might be staying. The detectives checked all the addresses. Gamble and Presley seemed to have disappeared.
We had one last place that we wanted to look before going home that particular day. We were on the way back, and the suggestion was made, let's ride by the uncle of LaSamuel Gamble. Let's ride by his house and just see if anyone's there. We did that, and when we did, we saw a red pickup truck that matches the description of the vehicle that was used in the robbery.
It had no plates, but they could see the vehicle identification number. The detectives noticed a Massachusetts parking permit in the corner of the windshield.
6802746.
They hoped Gamble's uncle would have information about the suspects.
Sir, I want to talk to you about that red truck on the side of your house.
The uncle agreed to answer their questions, but not at his home. He did not want to be seen with the cops. They took a drive so they could talk.
Okay, Mr. Gamble, we've done.
The uncle told investigators that the truck belonged to Stephen McKenzie, a friend of his nephew. It was the same name as the one on the Boston pay stub. The uncle admitted that his nephew recently stayed at his house with McKenzie and Presley. The trio had cleared out several days ago. Sergeant Yawn believed the uncle knew details.
And at first he really didn't want to give us any useful information, but we continued, and he did admit that they had left town and they had gone to Boston.
A check of the red pickup's Massachusetts parking permit confirmed that the truck belonged to Stephen McKenzie, the suspected getaway driver.
Everything going okay?
Eventually, the uncle gave investigators permission to search his property. He suggested they look under the porch. There, police found a paint gun. The serial number on the gun matched one taken from the pawn shop. There was enough probable cause to impound McKenzie's pickup and process it for evidence. But the technicians did not find anything that tied it to the pawn shop robbery homicide. With the possibility that the suspects had left the state, Shelby County authorities contacted FBI Special Agent Jeff Newton.
They requested FBI assistance in locating suspects that they had identified as they believed to be responsible for this terrible crime. At that point, I got information from the case from the Sheriff's Department representative, realized that we had enough probable cause at that point to apply for a federal unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, or UFAP warrant.
The FBI re-interviewed the suspect's friends. They told agents Gamble and Presley were acting desperate and volatile, and that the pair had promised, if the law ever caught up with them, they would not be taken alive. In Alabama, authorities struggled to find the men believed responsible for 2 robbery homicides. The state increased the reward for the capture of LeSamuel Gamble, Marcus Presley, and Stephen McKenzie to $100,000. FBI Special Agent Jeff Newton believed the suspects left Alabama for Boston.
Anybody who's a suspect in a double homicide is automatically rated at the highest priority. I immediately notified our Boston office, you got bad guys heading your way we believe or may already be there. I gave them lots of details, everything I learned from Shelby County pertaining to their level of violence, you know, what they look like. We were sending photographs, we were sending full physical descriptions.
At the Boston, Massachusetts FBI field office, Special Agent Joseph Altman received the priority call.
The 3 individuals were identified to us as vicious killers, that they had made claims to the effect that they would not hesitate to kill again, that they would not be taken alive, or that they would take the life of any law enforcement officer that attempted to stop them.
Birmingham agents also sent Boston a list of places they should investigate. One was the construction company where suspect Stephen McKenzie had worked. Agents went to speak with the owner. The man said he had not seen the suspect in weeks. If McKenzie was in the Boston area, he had not made an attempt to come back to work. The owner had an employment record, but it did not contain any new address or other information that would help find the suspect.
Great.
Boston authorities staked out the other addresses that Birmingham had sent, including one of another uncle of LeSamuel Gamble. But they did not approach this house immediately.
We did not want to let on that we were surveilling this particular home. We wanted to allow at least 1 or 2 areas, homes in the area that they could return to.
After several hours, they spotted a man leaving the residence.
Looks like him, yeah. Radio back in and tell him that someone's coming out of the house.
It was not one of the suspects. They waited until they were sure he was alone and not being watched.
How you doing, sir? I'm Special Agent Daniel and Special Agent Frenzel would like to ask you a couple questions if we could. All right. Do you live in that building?
He was hesitant to talk, but did say that neither Gamble's uncle nor the suspects were in the house.
No one's in there? Yeah, Mark is present.
But he had seen them.
Thank you very much. Again, we just have to ask you.
He told us that both Gamble and Presley had been staying at this location, but they had since moved out. He did not know where they moved to. We felt that this location was no longer vital in our investigation, so we obtained a search warrant and searched the home and did not discover anything of lead value.
Another address on their list was in Roxbury, a suburb south of Boston. An agent set up surveillance there. It meant more long hours with no promise of a payoff. On August 1st, 1996, the Boston FBI held a press conference.
We believe these individuals to be extremely dangerous, most likely armed. They're wanted in Alabama. We'd like to bring these individuals in.
They distributed wanted posters and asked anyone with information to call a special tip line.
Hey, man. Hey, guys.
Hey, what's up?
The media campaign produced dozens of leads.
We missed the 3 guys we were looking for. Okay?
One was an address outside Boston, where alleged getaway driver Stephen McKenzie was said to be staying. There was no word whether Gamble and Presley were with him.
All right, let's go.
The tactical arrest team had to be prepared for a fight. They caught McKenzie off guard. But Gamble and Presley were nowhere to be found. The 2 fugitives remained free and on the streets with an arsenal of stolen weapons. In August of 1996, the Boston SWAT team arrested one of 3 suspects who had fled Alabama after 2 robbery homicides. The suspected getaway driver, Stephen McKenzie, was unarmed and taken in for questioning.
Good work, guys.
Investigators searched the house where he was staying. They found jewelry, later determined to be from the Alabama pawn shop that was robbed. They also recovered 3 weapons. Running the serial numbers of the guns, agents learned they were among the 32 weapons stolen from the pawn shop.
P38, yeah. Right.
But nothing in the house indicated where LaSamuel Gamble and Marcus Presley were. Boston agents held McKenzie on a charge of receiving stolen property. They contacted prosecutor Randy Hillman in Shelby County, Alabama.
Immediately after receiving that telephone call, we got on a plane and flew to Boston to help the Boston investigators.
They hoped McKenzie could lead them to the elusive armed killers.
We knew the level of violence and the numbers of guns that they had and what a danger they posed to other people.
The Shelby County authorities interviewed McKenzie.
Mr. McKenzie, you know why we're here. Our major concern is that these weapons are going to get back out on the street, and someone else, innocent persons, are going to lose their lives.
They confronted him with the evidence they had. Hoping for sentencing leniency, the suspect began to talk.
We're sitting around or whatever and drinking, and we just decided, hey, let's do it.
He said that he, Presley, and Gamble planned the pawn shop robbery in mid-July. They drove by the shop to check it out.
Drive the car, you know, watch out, stay
Gamble said it would be a good place to rob. There were guns, jewelry, and cash inside, and no security.
I'm positive. It was guaranteed that, you know, no one would get hurt. It was just a in and out thing.
On July 25th, they returned in McKenzie's pickup. Gamble and Presley went inside while McKenzie waited. They were only supposed to grab the money and valuables. But then McKenzie heard shots. They took what they came for, then fled.
I have a hard time believing that you don't know where they are. I know we're right there close. We're real close to them. I still think that they're real close around here.
McKenzie said Gamble and Presley had run with him to Boston.
I mean, I don't know.
and that they might still be in the area somewhere.
I'm positive about it.
Investigators were
He's
unconvinced.
not telling us everything. He's going to back on us.
That's right. We'll let him sit in it for a while.
But we're not
He
close to
claimed that
this.
he did not know where they were at the time, which I don't know that he did. He did give us some information about where they had been staying, the different houses that they may have gone to, and some other information. I think Mackenzie held out on us. I think Mackenzie knew more than what he was telling us.
At trial, Mackenzie's testimony would be attacked. The prosecutor turned to the one unimpeachable witness, the surveillance video. He sent the tape to the FBI's audio and video processing lab in Quantico, Virginia. The task of cleaning up the footage fell to video program manager Dale Linden.
This tape was a VHS recording on a security system. It had, I would say, fairly poor quality as far as resolution. It had a backlighting issue where the camera was facing towards the windows. At some points, some of the people in this video scene looks like silhouette. As people moved around, the closer they got to the camera, the better images we were able to retrieve.
Focusing on the portions of video where the perpetrators were nearest the camera, Linden began enhancing the images.
Once we digitize these images, we will go through each one. And depending on what the problems are, we will apply different types of filter processes. In this particular case, the first thing we did was we did some contrast adjustments to make the images look brighter and focusing in primarily on the subjects. In this particular case, I felt that we did some improvement to get facial detail of the face and the weapons, and also their movements within the store itself.
The results strengthened the case against Gamble and Presley. Now authorities needed to catch them. The FBI continued their stakeout at a house in Roxbury, Massachusetts, where informants said the men might hide out. It was the best lead so far for FBI Special Agent Joseph Altman.
We surveilled this house for approximately 48 hours. The street information that we had was getting better and better all the time, that the individuals were holed up in this house. We thought that we saw movement in the house.
Are they ready? This is Special Agent Frasker. SWAT ready?
Field agents told the SWAT team to prepare for entry. Right before the go word was given, a man left the target house.
Excuse me, sir. How you doing?
Agents believed it was Gamble's uncle. They knew he was on probation for a felony offense. In accepting probation, a person gives up his Fourth Amendment rights. He can be stopped and searched at any time.
Oh, that's what we wanted to find out. Why don't you put them in this procedure? This all right. I don't care about your cousin. Gun!
Agents found a handgun.
This was one of the weapons that was actually stolen during the robbery in Alabama, one of the 32 weapons that were stolen. He told us that the subjects were no longer in this house. However, we felt that since he was related to the subjects and that he had a stolen weapon on him, that we could not take this information at face value. So Boston SWAT went ahead and made the entry.
Gamble and Presley had sworn never to be taken alive. So the SWAT team prepared for a shootout.
We felt that the only way that they were going to be extricated from the house was through force.
The tactical arrest team swept through the house, clearing each room as they went. no one was inside.
However, they did find some travel bags belonging to Presley and Gamble. Inside these bags were a couple of weapons, in addition to a photograph.
The photos showed the fugitives getting on a bus. The travel bags contained the shirts worn by Gamble and Presley at the pawn shop. Investigators also recovered one of the guns used in the pawn shop robbery.
Thank you, officer. Thank you very much. Come on, guys.
The uncle confirmed Gamble and Presley stayed at the house.
We found these pictures in there. Yeah, those are. Who's that? Those are both of them?
He said they left on a bus for Virginia, where Gamble's girlfriend lived.
Yeah, they had guns. They had guns too? Okay.
The FBI and Boston police had missed the dangerous fugitives by a matter of hours. On August 5th, 1996, fugitives LeSamuel Gamble and Marcus Presley eluded an arrest team in Boston. An uncle told agents the men had left for Virginia, where one had a girlfriend, but he did not know exactly where. To narrow the search, the FBI obtained the phone records of houses in Boston where the suspects might have stayed. For nearly 48 hours, agents combed through the records, looking for common numbers. According to FBI Special Agent Joseph Altman, they found one.
We did find a common phone numbers that occurred about 2.5 months before the murders took place and about a week after the murders took place.
The number was in the Norfolk, Virginia area. Boston agents contacted the FBI's Norfolk field office. On August 8th, Special Agent John Harley received word from Boston to apprehend the young fugitives.
Youth can be a factor in making somebody a little bit more unpredictable. If they're older and more set in their ways, they may even have a past pattern of conduct that we can look at and help us in apprehending that person. But with these two individuals, as young as they were, they proved to be very difficult because they were not predictable at all.
At 5:30 the next morning, the fugitive task force arrived.
You alone in there?
An individual came to the door who we weren't sure matched description or not initially, but we went ahead and detained him there at the door and asked if we could go ahead and consent to search his apartment, at which time he said we could.
Seen these guys? You haven't seen them before?
The resident recognized photographs of the suspects.
The individual who we talked to provided us information that he had had a party recently at his apartment and that two individuals matching the description of Presley and Gamble had come with a girl that he knew.
The place was empty, but the resident gave agents the girl's address.
Time is starting to tick by, and we then have to head over to try to locate this apartment where this girlfriend is apparently living, who's associated with the two subjects.
An arrest team quickly assembled outside the target apartment, a third-story residence. Norfolk police helped cordon off the area while agents assessed the building for entry.
It's now getting to be about 9 o'clock in the morning. The sun's up now, and we were getting concerned that if the two subjects were sleeping, that they weren't going to be sleeping for very much longer, and we would prefer to go in if they were obviously not awake.
The arrest team split into two groups and moved in.
We decided to make our main effort use the most people to go up the fire escape, which isn't the most conducive route, but it was the route that we thought offered the most surprise. We also then stationed two special state police agents on the front door, which would have been in the interior hallway, just to make sure that any bad guys didn't run out.
Agents did not have the time to obtain a search warrant for the apartment. To get inside and make a legal arrest, they would have to see the suspects or get permission. They spotted a resident through a back window and took a risk.
We announced to him who we were and that we were looking for a couple of individuals and asked if he minded if we took a look around. This older gentleman then stepped aside, nodded, "Come on in," and that's when we made our entry.
They found Presley first.
We immediately handcuffed him and detained him.
He had no opportunity to warn his friend. In a rear bedroom, the team found Gamble. The agents positively identified Presley and Gamble from photographs and placed them under arrest. U.S. Marshals transported the fugitives back to Shelby County, Alabama. When questioned at the county jail, LaSamuel Gamble blamed Presley for the murders. When they spoke to Marcus Presley, he had a different story. Each believed they had destroyed the surveillance tape.
Presley and Gamble both still thought that there was nobody alive from the robbery who could say exactly what happened. They continued to point the finger at each other, saying, "He's the one that did it," or "It wasn't me, it was someone else," until they saw the videotape. Once they saw the videotape, they realized that no longer could they lie about it, that we had them actually doing the executions. And the whole tenor of the conversation changed then. Eventually, Marcus Presley, after pointing the finger several other places, Presley confessed and said that he did do the killing.
How about this?
Presley also confessed to another crime. He had been the shooter in the gas station murder in Birmingham. He said he thought the cashier was going for a gun, so he shot him. In 1997, the three suspects had separate trials. For his role, Stephen McKenzie received 50 years. An Alabama jury convicted LaSamuel Gamble of capital murder and sentenced him to death for being part of the pawnshop slayings. Marcus Presley received the death penalty for killing the gas station cashier. Another jury sentenced him to death a second time for killing the pawn shop employees.
When the jurors saw this tape, they were shocked. People are used to seeing violence on television, and we've seen so much of it that you kind of become detached, that it becomes old hat to you. This was an actual videotape of two people being executed, and it had a profound impact on the jury. Actually, the owner of the pawn shop was an unwitting participant in the investigation of his own murder. By having the dummy VCR and putting that tape in our hands, showing the actual executions, he helped us solve this case a lot more quickly and with conviction, with absolute certainty. Whereas if we hadn't had this tape, it would have been a guessing game.
Two deadly fugitives are on the run from justice. Authorities follow an electronic trail and chase the escaped convict and his partner from state to state. The suspects are moving fast, determined to avoid capture. The police and FBI must track them down before they take another life.
Pennsylvania, an inmate escaped with the help of his female accomplice. Following a trail of fraudulent credit card receipts and death, authorities tracked the pair, but always find themselves one step behind. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The FBI and police raced to capture the deadly couple, who seemed to be running with no direction, no sense of fear, and nothing to lose.
10-7 investigation, Eddie and Bo.
September 25th, 1993. Friends of 74-year-old Guy Goodman contact the Palmyra, Pennsylvania police. They're concerned because they have not heard from him in over a week. Goodman's landlord meets an officer at his rented house.
You have a key for the door there?
I do.
Okay, let's go check it out.
Okay.
You just want to step back there?
All right.
The officer observes shards of broken porcelain on the floor and dried blood on the floor and walls. Blood spatter trails down the hall and leads to the basement stairs. In a storage room, he discovers a body. The officer calls for assistance.
Headquarters, code 3, requesting backup.
Tri-party clerical.
Unit 1833, go ahead.
Detective Paul Zeckman of the Lebanon County Detective Bureau takes the lead in the investigation.
Affirm, go ahead. 10-4, I'll be en route to that location.
The countywide bureau helps township police departments with major crime investigations.
It was evident that the house had been ransacked. The kitchen drawers were open, things were strewn around on the floor. Going down into the basement area, you could see drag marks led from the stairway to a small storage room.
The crime scene is gruesome. The victim's hands and feet are tied behind his back. Several layers of plastic bags, sheets, and blankets enshroud his head. Coverings are tightened at his neck with makeshift bindings.
These items were either duct taped or tied with electrical cords. The plastic bag was duct taped over the cloth covering.
Hoping to find a trace of the perpetrator, crime scene investigators carefully process the house. They dust every surface for latent fingerprints and collect a roll of duct tape left on a table. Likely the same tape used in the bindings. With no witnesses, only the careful examination of every item can help the detectives understand this crime.
We were trying to not only obtain the forensic evidence, but we were also trying to determine if any of the property was taken from the residence. We were able to establish that Mr. Goodman's wallet was missing.
They find American Express charge statements.
Oh.
But the card itself is missing.
Statement here. The account numbers get that all figured.
In the bedroom, investigators discover an open box of checks.
A series of checks from the middle of this box had been removed. We also knew that the vehicle of Mr. Goodman was also missing at this point.
What do you have to do out here yet?
Guy Goodman seemed like an unlikely target for this type of attack. Like most of the Palmyra, Pennsylvania community, Chief Michael Wayman knew of the victim.
Guy Goodman was a retired florist.
He was a lifelong resident of the Palmyra area, well known within the community and liked by everyone in the community. It was apparent that either the motive for this crime was a robbery that had gone bad, or that there was a robbery after the fact, after Mr. Goodman was assaulted and died.
Palmyra, Pennsylvania is located in Lebanon County. This peaceful community sees fewer than 3 murders per year. In most cases, the victim knows the killer. At the autopsy, the victim's face is unrecognizable. The medical examiner uses dental records to confirm it is Guy Goodman. Based on the body's decomposition, he concludes Goodman has been dead for about a week. Although the victim was severely beaten, his wounds were not fatal. An examination of his respiratory tract reveals he died slowly from suffocation. Latent prints recovered from Goodman's house are processed at the lab. Examiners check the prints against local arrest records and find a match. When the forensics report arrives on Zekman's desk, he isn't surprised by the results.
Fingerprints that we had obtained at the crime scene matched Bradley Martin.
Zekman knows the name all too well.
I just entered him as a wanted person, charging him with the escape from the county prison, so I knew he was on the run.
Many of Lebanon County's inmates are part of a work release program. Bradley Martin, a repeat thief and drug user, is one of these work release prisoners. Over a week earlier, Martin used a 2-hour pass, a weekly perk of the work release program, to meet his new girlfriend, Carolyn King. 27-year-old King worked at a factory where she met the 21-year-old work release prisoner. When Martin failed to return, prison officials launched a fugitive investigation. They called the Lebanon County Detective Bureau. After obtaining a fugitive warrant for Martin, the detectives checked Carolyn King's apartment, concerned for her well-being. But King is not there, and they find nothing to indicate where she has gone, or even if she is with Martin. The detectives entered Martin in NCIC, the National Criminal Information Center. Once the murder of Guy Goodman is discovered, there is a greater urgency to find Martin than to determine if Carolyn King is unharmed. The detectives interview Martin's friends and co-workers. What they learn surprises them.
Through interviews, we were able to establish that Bradley Martin and Carolyn King were together several days after Guy Goodman was murdered. We were able to establish that they were together in the Palmyra area, and then it was just blank.
Detectives face the possibility that Carolyn King may be Martin's accomplice. Earlier, when Detective Zekman ran a statewide background check on King, she came up clean. He tries again, this time using a national database. He learns she has a long criminal history, including theft and check forgery. She has outstanding warrants for her arrest and is also a suspect in 2 murders in Virginia. The detectives have no idea where the 2 suspects are. If they left town right after the Goodman murder, they have more than a week's head start. Detectives hope to track the suspects using the American Express charge card and the checks stolen from the victim's home.
Okay, let me call a guy at the American Express Security Department.
That's great.
Detective Wayman asks American Express Global Security in New York to help. Joe Gannon, the chief investigator in Amex Security, works to assist the police.
And I'll be back to you as soon as I can.
Got it. Thanks. We flagged Mr. Goodman's account because he was the victim of a homicide, and the chances were that the perpetrators of that homicide were in possession of that card.
A review of Goodman's account shows purchases made after Goodman's death. The transactions leave a trail that may lead to Goodman's killer.
We discovered that the charges began in western Pennsylvania and continued out through the Ohio Valley, down into Iowa and Kansas, and then they turned north. And the last transaction we had on record was in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Armed with a solid lead, the Pennsylvania detectives waste no time. They catch the next available flight to Rapid City, South Dakota. The killers had disappeared. But the victim's charge card had become the investigators' best informant. Police hope the trail of surfacing transactions will lead them to the murderers. Within hours, the Pennsylvania detectives arrive in Rapid City. Accompanied by local police, they visit the last stores where the charge card was used. Interviews with clerks verify their suspicions.
Up until this point, we were speculating that Bradley Martin and Carolyn King were the two people that were using Goodman's American Express card.
Then, investigators catch their first real break.
Some of the individuals were able to identify Bradley Martin as the user of the card. Some were able to identify Carolyn King as the user of the card.
The revelation confirms their theory.
It was no longer a whodunit. We knew for certain who had done it. Now it was a matter of changing the focus of the investigation to apprehending them.
The Pennsylvania detectives circulate photos and detailed information about the suspects to all South Dakota law enforcement agencies. The Rapid City Police Fraud Unit, or Bunko Squad, tells them of an interracial couple who've been passing bad checks at local stores.
Rapid City Police Department had a black and white bunco team who were trying to do a con game within the area. It was a black female and a white male driving a vehicle with Virginia plates. We knew that this fit the description of Carolyn King and Bradley Martin. We knew that Carolyn King had a vehicle with Virginia plates. We felt that they were there working in the Rapid City area.
Driver's license registration, please.
The Pennsylvania detectives assist as Rapid City Police pull over the couple in the car with Virginia plates. They confirm the couple is the team Rapid City detectives have been hunting, but not the suspected killers.
The black female and the white male were in fact not Martin and King. They were just simply another couple that matched the description and who were doing their own criminal activities.
American Express informs the detectives there have been no new charges in over a week. The investigation appears to be back at the beginning with no leads.
Okay, what I can do for you is give you...
But King and Martin are having trouble using their murder victims' out-of-state checks.
Let me get my manager for you, ma'am.
They need another source of cash. Their next victim, a 59-year-old woman traveling alone, Donna Martz.
What are you doing?
The terrified woman complies when they force her to take them to her car. The next day, the Pennsylvania detectives learn that someone passed several of Guy Goodman's checks in North Dakota.
The bank had cleared checks written in a number of locations in the Bismarck, North Dakota area.
This supports the detective's theory.
They had used the credit card. Now they were utilizing the checks stolen from Guy Goodman at the time of his homicide that further validated that they had to have been the persons who committed the homicide.
Detective Allender, please.
Zeckman phones authorities in Bismarck from the road.
I'm Sergeant Zeckman from Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. I made contact with a detective within the Bismarck Police Department. I told him of locations that I had checks passed, and I gave him a rundown of the Guy Goodman homicide and who was involved and what evidence we had discovered up to this point. And there was a long pause from the detective. And I asked him what was wrong, and he said, well, we're investigating a missing persons from that same hotel where one of these Goodman checks were passed.
Donna Martz's family called police when she did not return home from Bismarck. They described Martz and her Chrysler New Yorker. Police comb Bismarck for any sign of Martz or her car, but find nothing. The detectives fear Martin and King have grabbed Donna Martz. The case has a new urgency. A woman's life is at stake. Police investigate the death of 74-year-old retired florist Guy Goodman, who was severely beaten, then murdered in his rural Pennsylvania home. Investigators determined that the victim's charge card and a book of checks were stolen. Fingerprints at the scene identify two likely perpetrators: 21-year-old Bradley Martin and his 27-year-old girlfriend, Carolyn King. Pennsylvania detectives Paul Zeckman and Michael Wayman follow the pair of fugitives to Bismarck, North Dakota, and learn authorities there are investigating the disappearance of a woman from the same hotel where one of Goodman's checks was passed. Donna Martz, a traveling tour guide for an interstate bus line, was last seen at the hotel where the suspects were staying. When Martz didn't arrive home as scheduled, her family reported her missing. Local authorities issue an APB on Martz's Chrysler New Yorker. The Bismarck FBI joins the case, led by Special Agent Craig Welkin.
The FBI and the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation set up a task force which was joined by other agencies, including the Bismarck Police Department and the local Sheriff's Department.
When the Pennsylvania detectives arrive in Bismarck, they share the information on the fugitives that they gathered over the past week.
They became an integral part of the task force on this case. The linking of King and Martin was very critical in the investigation.
With potential suspects identified in the abduction of Donna Martz, the task force still struggles for viable leads. They continue to search the hotel.
We spoke with the clerks at the hotel in Bismarck where Donna Martz was last seen. And they were able to tell us that Bradley Martin and Carolyn King had stayed at the same hotel.
Hotel personnel also recall that around 9 a.m. on September 26th, King and Donna Martz were only a few feet apart.
They were able to confirm that Carolyn King had been in the lobby at the same time that Donna Martz was in the small dining area having her continental breakfast.
No one noticed Martz leaving the hotel with anyone, but investigators fear she's been kidnapped. Now they need to find out where the fugitives went next. Then, police discover Guy Goodman's car, abandoned, outside Bismarck. There is no sign of Donna Martz. and the search reveals only receipts from stores along the suspect's route and several unused checks bearing Goodman's name. Once again, the suspects have left authorities with no leads. FBI Special Agent Craig Welkin knows they must find Martz before her kidnappers decide to kill her.
Everybody in an investigation like this is extremely busy. Lots of information coming in, including information that really is extraneous, but you don't know that at the time. So there's a lot of sifting and sorting of information, a lot of trying to prioritize and make sure that your primary emphasis is in the right direction to recover the victim alive and well and apprehend the suspects.
Sleepless hours pass with no leads. Then, a break. Working with Donna Martz's bank, detectives learn her credit card was used in a shopping mall more than 100 miles away.
She had no relatives out there. There was just absolutely no reason for her to go that way.
The MO matches that of Goodman's killers.
Martz's credit card started showing charges on it a day or so after she had gone missing. We were fairly certain that she was not the one doing the charges.
The FBI dispatches teams to interview sales clerks at the mall. None of the clerks can positively identify Martin or King as the user of the card. But they are sure Martz did not make the purchases, which were for young men's clothing.
When you're working the case, you become very much aware that the clock is working against you, particularly when you have a situation like this where we know that Guy Goodman was murdered.
The next significant lead comes when Martz's account posts a withdrawal in Montana. It occurred days earlier at an ATM in the small town of Shelby. Montana FBI agents bring the ATM surveillance tape to the command post in Bismarck. Detectives Wayman and Zeckman positively identify Bradley Martin using Martz's credit card. It is the first definitive proof linking the suspects to Donna Martz. The tape confirms Martin and King traveled west, but there is still no sign of Martz. The evidence is building. Yet investigators' main concern is not prosecution, but finding Donna alive.
And although we had an ideal that they were heading in a general direction of west, they could change that direction at any time, so it was very frustrating because we felt that there was a short time frame in which, if Donna Martz was still alive, that we would be able to apprehend them and save her.
Special Agent Welkin knows they must speed up the process of tracking the victim's credit card usage.
I contacted Ben Patty, a retired FBI special agent who was employed by a major credit card company issuing Donna Martz's card.
At Visa's San Francisco headquarters, International Fraud Control Director Ben Patty agrees to help.
Normally, when a cardholder uses their credit card, that bank that issued the card will not see that transaction information for 2 to 3 days. That's when it's posted, and the bank would then know where the transaction occurred. Craig Welkin was really wanting to find out when the card that belonged to Donna Martz was used in real time, which we could not do with the systems as they were at that time.
To locate the suspects the instant they use the card, Visa must create a complex reporting system for a single credit card. But Donna Martz's life is on the line.
We contacted the systems people in the computer center and explained to them what we wanted. They said, okay, we'll go into our systems, make the necessary changes in the mainframe computer so that this specific cardholder number could be captured as it came through our systems.
The programmers estimate it will take at least 24 hours to create and implement the new program. FBI agents hope that the computer program will finally put them closer to the murder suspects and to Donna Martz before she, too, is killed. The coroner for Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, determined that retired florist Guy Goodman was savagely beaten and then slowly suffocated to death. His face was unrecognizable at the autopsy. The suspects, 21-year-old Bradley Martin and 27-year-old Carolyn King, have more than 20 felony convictions between them and are now fugitives on the run across the heartland of America. Authorities believe the couple is holding their latest victim, Donna Martz, captive and using her credit cards. The last charge was recorded in Montana. The FBI and police from across the country are in pursuit, tracking the suspects through the victim's credit card usage. Investigators remain one step behind. Led by Special Agent Craig Welkin.
That was due to the flow of the information from the merchants to the credit card company, and then when that information was actually available from the computer database.
In 1993, banking computers take days to post each transaction. Investigators await a new Visa program that will trap any activity on Martz's card. Pennsylvania detective Paul Zeckman chased the pair from the beginning of their flight.
It was very frustrating being days behind locating places that Martz's credit card had been used, because we knew that, number one, this couple had killed Guy Goodman. We knew that Donna Martz potentially was going to be the next victim. If she had not already been killed, there was nothing we could do more than what we were doing to try and locate them and stop this from happening.
Investigators try to estimate where the suspects will go next. They alert all law enforcement agencies on the suspects' possible routes. They post descriptions of the suspects in their vehicle in the National Crime Information Center's nationwide database.
We entered both Bradley Martin and Carolyn King in NCIC. They were also entered in as kidnapping suspects. In addition to that, regional messages had gone out to all the police departments to be on the lookout for Donna Martz, Carolyn King, or Bradley Martin.
If any police force in the country runs into the couple, the Bismarck Task Force will be notified. To further increase their chances, investigators faxed descriptions of the suspects and the victim to police agencies along Martin and King's likely routes. But there are no incoming leads beyond the sporadic credit card purchases. Detectives Wayman and Zeckman returned to Pennsylvania to re-interview everyone who knows the fugitives. They hope Martin and King have made contact with someone back home.
We continually talked to individuals in the Palmyra area who were associates of Bradley Martin, trying to find out if there was recent contact with him or Carolyn King, and if there was, where were they at, where did they call from.
But no one offers new information. Despite every effort, investigators still have nothing. The FBI receives an update from the Visa Corporation in San Francisco.
This is Ben Patty, Visa International.
Visa fraud investigator and former Special Agent Ben Patty had asked the company's systems programmers for a way to trace Martz's credit card transactions as they are made.
And I told the FBI, and we set up a system of contact between our systems people in Virginia, myself, and in the FBI, and their command post. After the system was in place, the first transaction that came through was a service station gas transaction in Southern California.
It was in Los Angeles several hours earlier. Investigators are closer, but still too far behind. While the task force notifies authorities in the LA area, Visa gets another hit on Donna Martz's card.
The transaction came through our systems in real time. As soon as it came through the systems, we notified the FBI's command post, and it would have been within our 2-hour time that the transaction actually occurred.
Then a transaction is made at a hotel in National City outside San Diego. Agents at the command post contact the FBI's San Diego field office. And the lead goes to Supervisory Special Agent Sam Stanton.
We received information that the Donna Martz credit card had been used at the hotel in National City. So immediately I dispatched agents over to the hotel off Interstate 5. Agents interviewed the manager and the security guard and employees at the hotel and was able to determine that a couple matching Martin and King had stayed at the hotel using Donna Martz's credit card.
But the couple checked out 2 hours earlier, paying for the room with the Visa. Police officers and FBI agents swarm the area, checking hotel parking lots, convenience stores, and gas stations for Donna Martz's Chrysler New Yorker or any sign of Martin and King. Special Agent Stanton knows finding the car is a long shot, especially when that car has a 2-hour lead on authorities.
Where San Diego's a very large city, and to try to find a vehicle in a city that size would be almost impossible. But we did put out an all-points bulletin and notified the state judicial police and the federal police in Mexico and the Border Patrol, thinking that maybe the individuals were headed toward Mexico.
The Tijuana border is the busiest in the world. In 1993, nearly 40,000 Americans cross into Mexico every day without having to show even an ID. If the fugitives make it past the border, it is unlikely they will ever be found.
All right. I know it's been a couple of days, but have you heard from Brad or Carolyn?
Well,
Then, the Pennsylvania detectives finally catch a break that narrows the search.
And what do you have to say?
According to Chief Michael Wayman,
We received information from an associate of Bradley Martin's, indicating that they had received a phone call from Bradley, and that Bradley was in San Diego, that he was with Carolyn King, and that they were headed back towards Pennsylvania. We took that information. We notified the San Diego office of the FBI, and they in turn notified the California Highway Patrol.
the fugitives made the call as they checked out of the hotel in San Diego. Martin and King still have a 2-hour lead, but authorities continue closing the gap. Soon a hunch and a bit of luck will bring the investigation to a violent and dangerous conclusion. Fall 1993. Authorities chase Bradley Martin and Carolyn King, suspected of murder in Pennsylvania and kidnapping in North Dakota. Investigators from both states are frustrated that for weeks they have been one step behind the suspects. They hope to find the pair before the abducted woman, Donna Martz, is killed. Then a new program created by the Visa Corporation at the FBI's request puts investigators only 2 hours behind the suspects.
Someplace.
Investigators learn the two have just checked out of a San Diego area hotel. Based on their checkout time and the tip that the fugitives are heading east, FBI agents try to estimate their position. Special Agent Stanton has a hunch that the suspects will use Interstate 8, the southernmost highway going east. He determines that Martin and King will soon be approaching El Centro, California, near the Arizona border.
I called Agent Paul Vick in the El Centro office of the FBI and asked him to send out an all-points bulletin.
Stanton hopes he has picked the right route. As El Centro Special Agent Paul Vick takes it from there.
I called the California Highway Patrol dispatchers and asked them to broadcast the Martz's car description.
Wanted for murder that just left a hotel in San Diego, and we suspect they might be headed east on Interstate 8 and even stopped.
The all-points bulletin about 187 suspects, police code for murder, is transmitted to every officer on Interstate 8, including California Highway Patrolman Richard Chambers.
CHP unit, El Centro, continuing standby copy information on 187 suspects possibly en route to El Centro.
I went and checked my section of the freeway like I normally would in the beginning of my shift, and I went west on Interstate 8.
As Chambers drives, he receives the suspect's descriptions.
First suspect is a Bradley Martin, white male, 6 foot 160. Second subject is a Carolyn King, black female, wanted by the FBI.
Within minutes, Chambers believes he has spotted the car.
I was driving west on the freeway through the desert, and there's not that much traffic. I saw the car go by eastbound, and I believed it matched the description.
But Chambers cannot see the car's license plate.
I wasn't sure, so I made a U-turn through the center divider and overtook the vehicle and verified the license plate. And it was, in fact, bearing the North Dakota license plate that we had received. El Centro 11684, I think I'm behind the 187 vehicle. Could you send me a backup car?
Suspect in the vehicle, looks like the black female driving. 21.
Dispatch advises Officer Chambers that there is no backup immediately available.
888, 10-8, Stevenson 880, 10-8 responding.
Only one unmarked unit races to catch up to the suspects.
That's Sergeant Riley responding to the pursuit, joining pursuit.
Police know the suspects are desperate and probably armed.
2 suspects, the black female driving. We'll attempt to contact DPS.
10-4, and they know I'm behind them at 60 miles an hour coming up on 186.
10-4 at 60 miles per hour coming up on 186.
But so far, the suspects appear calm as they approach State Route 186.
Report, they're going to head us south on 186 where it looks. They're getting off 186.
10-4 southbound on 186.
Chambers' backup is still several miles behind, racing to catch up. On Route 186, the chase intensifies.
They're not stopping, they're trying to accelerate to
70. The suspects try to shake Officer Chambers, but he maintains pursuit, even as they escalate to 90 miles an hour.
El Centro, notify YPD and DPS. Looks like we're going to be going slower and they go I-8 eastbound. Proceeding eastbound in Arizona.
The suspects cross into Arizona with Chambers on their heels. Although a California officer outside of his jurisdiction, Chambers continues his pursuit. He relays information to Arizona authorities. Then, the danger increases.
The male passenger did come out of the right front window with a handgun.
They're shooting. They are shooting. Sound like they're shooting.
Chambers stays on them, intent to capture the deadly suspects. As the cars speed toward the town of Yuma, Arizona, dozens of officers listening in race to cover Chambers. October 5th, 1993. California Highway Patrol Officer Richard Chambers engages in a high-speed chase with murder and kidnapping suspects Carolyn King and Bradley Martin. Near El Centro, California, the pursuit crosses into Arizona. Backup is responding. But as the suspects barrel toward the town of Yuma, Arizona, Officer Chambers is on his own and under fire. He knows he must capture the pair before they kill again. The suspects exit onto a smaller road, this one with intersections. Chambers radios their position.
They're going into Yuma now. Get my units out there to back them up.
They run through 2 stop signs without incident. Then, when they crash, the suspects flee on foot.
I got out of my car and drew my pistol and ordered them to stop, and I told them if they didn't stop, I'd shoot, and at that time the female did stop.
Then, Carolyn King orders Martin to stop.
Hey, get down! You, call right there!
And I was able to handcuff the female. I just had one pair of handcuffs with me at the time, and I held the male passenger at gunpoint until Yuma PD arrived. It was probably only a minute or 2, but it seemed longer than that.
When the backup officer arrives, he helps take the suspects into custody.
Put your hands behind your back.
After a 2-week cross-country flight, pursued by police and the FBI, Carolyn King and Bradley Martin have finally been stopped. But investigators' first concern is the safety of the kidnapped woman, Donna Martz. She is not inside the car. On the floorboards lies the handgun Martin fired at Chambers. They open the trunk. Inside, police find duct tape, a knife, and Donna Martz's glasses. But nothing indicating where she is. Martin and King are taken to the Yuma Police Department, but they refuse to tell officers what happened to the kidnapped woman. FBI agents arrive and interrogate the suspects separately. Carolyn King is defiant from the start, refusing even to admit her real identity. She claims no knowledge of Donna Martz. Another agent is unsuccessful with Bradley Martin as well. When Special Agent Paul Vick reaches the station, he learns that Martin has refused to talk.
Bradley Martin was pacing back and forth with his hands handcuffed behind him. He appeared to be in some kind of discomfort.
Vic decides to try another approach.
Martin told me that his neck hurt and he had pain extending down into his right arm.
Hoping to win Martin over and get him to cooperate, Vic offers to recuff him in front so he will be more comfortable. His strategy works.
Martin told me that he would speak with me.
The agent reminds Martin he had earlier invoked his right to an attorney, but the suspect says he is now waiving that right. Vic drafts a statement to ensure Martin's waiver will hold up in court.
Once he agreed to that, he signed this piece of paper that I wrote out that he agreed to talk to me, even though he had invoked earlier. After he signed that document, I looked him straight in the eyes and I told him that I knew that he killed somebody in Pennsylvania, but that I wanted to know that Martz was okay. And then I told him, "Is she okay?" And Martin looked at me and he told me, "No, I killed her."
Martin says they kept Mrs. Martz for over a week. But after several close calls with police, he decided to get rid of her. They stopped in the Nevada desert. He got her out of the trunk and walked her to a ditch at gunpoint. He says she knew he was going to kill her. She said one thing before he fired, that she loved her children. The news devastates everyone who had hoped to save Donna.
At the conclusion of the interview with Martin, we obtained a map which showed approximately where Martz could be located in Nevada. And we then faxed the map to the Elko, Nevada FBI office, at which time, late at night, a search was initiated to look for Donna Martz's body.
But Martin was doing drugs during his fugitive trek. His memory is unclear and his map inaccurate. Several times during the night, search crews call in for more information. The desert area near Elko, Nevada is hundreds of square miles. The crews do their best searching through the night and into the morning. Then, on October 7th, investigators find the body of Donna Martz about 1.5 miles off Interstate 80.
In a case like the Guy Goodman, Donna Martz homicides, the drive is to keep anyone else from getting hurt. Secondly, it's solving the case, get them off the street and into jail, and then successfully prosecute them.
In Nevada, Martin and King plead guilty to the kidnapping and murder of Donna Martz and receive life sentences. In Pennsylvania, they are found guilty of the murder of Guy Goodman. Both Martin and King are sentenced to death.
This case is an excellent example which showed the interagency cooperation between the FBI and local county and state officials in California, Arizona, North Dakota, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and numerous other states. From working together, we were able to solve this case and apprehend King and Martin and get them convicted.
For Donna Martz's 11 grandchildren, 3 children, family, and friends, the convictions bring a sense of closure. Even today, they are comforted in knowing police and the FBI caught Martin and King before they could claim yet another victim. A series of explosions rip through New York City. Sifting through the wreckage in search of one shred of evidence, the FBI and police are desperate for something to lead them to these ruthless terrorists. But the killers are careful to cover their tracks. As the bombings escalate, the FBI is in a deadly race to stop this murderous group with a dangerous cause.
In the late 70s and early 80s, a legitimate Puerto Rican independence movement took hold in the United States. But a splinter terrorist group known as the FALN was suspected of executing hundreds of bombings in major U.S. cities. I'm Jim Kellstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The terrorists were smart, well-organized, and deadly, and went to great lengths to conceal their identities. Agents were determined to shut them down before they hit again.
New York City, October 26, 1974. Just after midnight. 5 explosions rock Manhattan. New York City police officers race to the scenes. The biggest explosion occurs in the financial district. NYPD detective Elmer Toro leads the investigation. One look at the devastation and Toro knows he will be lucky to find any useful evidence. It appears the bombers used dynamite.
The problem with bombings is that most of the evidence disappears at the scene. It disappears because how do you trace dynamite? We had no way of tracing dynamite. You can hope for a fingerprint here and there. You can hope for a witness.
Police question everyone in the area, but no one had seen the bomber. The pattern of debris indicates the bomb was placed under a car.
It was put under the engine block, and it picked up the car, and the engine just flew up in the air. Pieces landed up all the way up on the 6th floor. It was a pretty impressive bombing. We did realize quickly that we had a serious problem in our hands.
The only solid clue found at the scene is the tattered remains of what appears to be a leather luggage handle. While police continue to process the scene, they get a call from the Associated Press. One of the alleged bombers called the news agency and told them to look at a phone booth near the bomb site. The patrolman is dispatched to the location. There, under the phone, he finds a letter. He takes it to headquarters to study it for leads. The letter is from a group calling themselves the FALN. In Spanish, the initials stand for the Armed Forces for the National Liberation of Puerto Rico. They are a fringe group with a limited following.
The FALN is not even known in Puerto Rico. It's known to the radical, it's known to those fighting for independence, but in general, you speak to the average Puerto Rican, and the FALN is totally unknown to them.
The former Spanish colony of Puerto Rico is voluntarily part of the United States. In elections, more than 90% of Puerto Ricans vote to continue to be part of the U.S., while less than 5% vote for independence. Now that 5% has turned dangerous. In the letter, the FALN demands that the U.S. abandon Puerto Rico, or more bombs will explode.
These are not people that believe in the electoral system. Their objective is to be violent and, through fear, cause the people to support them.
What began as a bombing investigation is now a terrorist attack. And fighting terrorism is the job of the FBI. The NYPD goes to the Bureau. Detective Toro briefs FBI Special Agent Don Wofford on the evidence found at the bombing locations.
The evidence showed that the device was a dynamite-like high explosive, definitely set off by some kind of detonator, because that's the only thing that sets off the sticks of dynamite. There were plenty of pieces to show a watch had been used as the timing device, and plenty of pieces of a battery showing that the battery had been used to complete the circuit. Pieces of debris showing that this device was in some kind of bag. Several pieces of a handle were found.
It's not much to go on, but it's all the investigators have. They try to find out who made the handle. Perhaps they can use the information to learn who bought it. They then turn their attention to the communique. It demands the U.S. abandon Puerto Rico and release 5 Puerto Rican terrorists from federal prison. The terrorists have been in prison since the 1950s. Decades earlier, on November 1st, 1950, 2 Puerto Rican gunmen try to assassinate President Harry Truman and fail. 2 Washington, D.C. policemen are badly injured in the gun battle. 1 policeman, as well as one of the terrorists, dies. The surviving gunman is sentenced to life in prison. 3 years later, 4 more pro-independence Puerto Ricans are sent to prison after opening fire in the House of Representatives. Now Detective Toro and Agent Wolford theorize friends or family of the 5 may be behind this new terror group.
I was hopeful that working on the background and the current status, maybe, of those 5 political prisoners would be some kind of lead. So we went behind each of those people. We checked their mailing list. We checked their people who visited them.
At the same time, the NYPD and FBI monitor any Puerto Rican activists who have a history of promoting violence. 1 month after the bombing, the NYPD gets a call about a dead body in an abandoned building in Spanish Harlem. Rookie NYPD officer Angel Poggi, on his first day on the job, goes to investigate. Officer Poggi is of Puerto Rican descent and proud to have become one of New York City's finest.
The door was booby-trapped, and he blasted him right across the street and ended his career on the spot.
Although Officer Poggi survived the blast, he lost sight in his right eye. When police search the building, they find no dead body. The phone call was a lie to lure police into a deadly trap. The bomb squad recovers explosive residue and another luggage handle. Like the earlier bombing, they determined this bomb was made of dynamite. From the pattern of the blast damage, they suspect it was probably hung on the back of the door, possibly in a garment bag. Through another phone tip, police recover an FALN communique that proudly claims credit for bombing Officer Poggi. For the NYPD, this investigation has become personal.
They're fighting for Puerto Rican independence, and the first cop they mutilate is a Puerto Rican kid. A Puerto Rican kid, because that's all he was. When they get to your house, you sort of react a little bit different. We knew we had a war in our hands.
The communique says the bombing is revenge for the death of an obscure Puerto Rican poet, Martin Tito Perez.
If you had put Martin Tito Perez's name out in Spanish Harlem, probably a lot of people might have known who he was. But in the rest of Manhattan and in the rest of the United States, of course, nobody would have known who Martin Tito Perez was, except the bomber knew. At this point, we knew we had a Spanish Harlem connection.
A few days earlier, police photographed a Puerto Rican man in Spanish Harlem, handing out leaflets accusing the police of murdering Martin Perez in jail. Although Perez's death was officially ruled a suicide, the activist urges violent revenge against the police. His name is William Morales.
William Morales was a very activist person in Spanish Harlem. He was one of the Puerto Rican independence type people who were at any demonstration, any rally, or whatever. He was a player in the Puerto Rican independence movement.
While Morales seems suspicious, police don't have enough to bring him in. They continue their search for anyone who knows anything about the crippling attack on Officer Poggi, but come up empty. While the investigation stalls, the FALN set their sights on a historic tavern in the heart of New York's financial district. The terrorists are raising the stakes for their deadly cause. A terrorist group called the FALN detonates a series of bombs all over New York City. The FBI struggles to piece together the evidence in time to stop the bombers before they strike again. They are fighting a losing battle. Historic Francis Tavern in the financial district is a popular lunch spot for Wall Street brokers. January 24th, a bomb explodes during the lunch rush. The blast kills 4 people and injures more than 60. The victims are rushed to area hospitals. FBI Special Agent Don Wolford.
It's one of the worst explosive crime scenes I have seen in my Bureau career. The entire first floor was nothing but splinters. All of the tables and chairs and walls and everything was just splinters.
Okay, look up here.
The first bombs did not kill anyone. The second targeted a single individual. This time, the bombers clearly intended to kill as many people as possible.
This was a midday bomb, not 3 o'clock in the morning, not a bomb hung in an abandoned tenement, but a bomb put in an active restaurant full of people.
It is a scene that FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn will never forget.
The streets were wet, having been hosed down to hose off the blood and damage to the individuals that had been injured or died at the scene. Seeing that scene impacted me in such a way that I really wanted to make sure that we solved those cases.
At the site of the blast, investigators again find a luggage handle similar to the one found at the earlier bombings. Independently, witnesses tell them that a few minutes before the bomb exploded, a suspicious man left a garment bag.
He's not dressed to be in Fraunces Tavern Restaurant with Wall Street brokers at noon. He must have taken a wrong turn, and why is he leaving that bag? Didn't reach down and turn on any switches, according to all the witnesses. He just dropped it. So that bomb was ticking. That thing was going. And based on the damage it did, it probably had 20 to 30 sticks of dynamite in it. So there's a man walking around Manhattan with a bomb with 20 or 30 sticks of dynamite in it. That takes some dedication.
And his hair was parted.
Witnesses work with a police artist to develop sketches of the suspect. This group was clearly becoming more dangerous, and the FBI intensifies their efforts.
Look, I got this sketch on.
The FBI distributes the sketch all over New York. But investigators can't find anyone who matches the description.
So on these letters,
In the lab, technicians review what little physical evidence they have. They turn to the letters left at each of the sites, outlining the terrorist group demands.
Their objective was to kill executives from U.S. corporations, and they say that right in the communique. Corporate America is seen in those days as part of the military-industrial complex, and as such, attacking U.S. corporations is as good as attacking the U.S. government.
right here.
Lab technicians confirmed that all 3 FALN communiques use the same paper, typeface, and letterhead. It's not much to go on.
We found out, to our chagrin, that the complete communique, the paper, the ink, the font, the type, the stencil, the logo, and everything could be bought at 1 million different places in Manhattan.
I think you already know.
The luggage handles do provide lab technicians with a promising lead. The garment bags used to hide the bombs are all one particular model made by one manufacturer. It could be the break the investigators need. The FBI contacts the manufacturer for a list of every store in the New York area that carries the bags. Over the next few weeks, investigators visit each store and show the sketch. But no one seems to recognize the suspect. The bombings continue. 3 months after the Fraunces Tavern bombing, an FALN communique takes credit for 4 bombs that explode after midnight in Midtown Manhattan. Then, 800 miles away in Chicago, the unimaginable happens. Bombs explode at 2 banks. An FALN communique takes credit. The terrorists are now a nationwide threat. In the New York FBI office, investigators compare the Chicago communique with earlier FALN communiques.
We know immediately when we get the communique, from the masthead being the same, from the logo being the same, that this is in fact our FALN.
This gives investigators new angles to pursue.
There's a whole new theory that arises from that, and that is that we can't find them in New York because they're really a Chicago-based group.
The FBI contacts Special Agent William Dyson in the Chicago field office.
This is the first time Chicago is being involved in this group called the FALN. New York has a very large Puerto Rican population, and it appeared as though these attacks were going to be strictly in New York. Now Chicago comes new on the scene. So we were really not sure what to do. We're turning to New York saying, do you have any leads? Can you give us a hint? Where do we go?
Somehow, the FALN must communicate or travel between New York and Chicago. The FBI and police begin rechecking their list of potential suspects.
We can look at our New York people and see what kind of Chicago connections they have. Do they travel to Chicago at all? Do they, in turn, have visitors from Chicago? Is the travel the reverse? Do we see Chicago people in New York, and then do we have a bombing?
Investigators determined that several of the Puerto Rican activists they had been watching in New York have links to Chicago.
We had all of our people that we thought were interested under 24-hour surveillance. And by that, I mean we were sticking with them wherever they went. I would spend weeks and weeks on the street. We just couldn't get to the next level.
Their surveillance is not working, and the terror continues. 9 months after the Francis Tavern bombing, bombs again explode in New York. This time, the bombs also tear through the financial centers of Chicago and Washington, D.C. Once again, the FALN takes credit. After the attack, law enforcement in Chicago and corporate security guards respond by searching around their buildings. Outside the corporate headquarters of an oil company, guards discover a suspicious bouquet of flowers linked to FALN.
And they find 14 roses, high quality roses, like you would give for Mother's Day or something of that nature. Within these roses is this bomb.
The Chicago police bomb tech defuses the bomb. Now, for the first time, investigators will have the opportunity to examine an unexploded FALN bomb, which could provide critical leads. A crime lab technician reads the unique identification numbers on the sticks of dynamite. It is traced to a dam project in New Mexico, but the trail stops there. No dynamite was reported stolen. When that lead proves to be a dead end, investigators try to trace the bouquet of roses.
We've got to go to the florist. Well, it turns out there's something like 800 florists in the Chicago area. We went to every one of them. When I say we, I mean law enforcement. It wasn't just the FBI. We all got together, and we all divided up all the florist shops, and we went to every one of them. Could not find where those roses came from.
Back in New York, the FBI realizes the components of this bomb match the other bombs. Investigators compile lists of all the stores in the New York City area that sell each of the items. They find one store that sells everything.
We identify a store up in the Bronx that sells the particular types of watches that have been used, it sells the propane tanks. More importantly, it sells the types of bags that have been used to contain the bombs.
The FBI theorizes that maybe the bombers got sloppy and bought everything at the same store. At the store, investigators show the owner the composite sketch.
Couldn't say by name who the person was, but that a person similar in appearance to that person had been in his store, definitely buying a whole series of the bags and a whole series of the batteries.
Investigators believe this could be a major break. They show the store owner photos of possible suspects. She can't positively ID any of them, but she does agree to help.
We did solicit the cooperation of the owner of the store. She allowed us to go in and mark discreetly the bags, the watches, those sorts of things, to see whether or not they would be used in a device.
These marks might survive the blast and could confirm the items were purchased from her store. Investigators also establish round-the-clock surveillance.
And when a person bought a bag, we would put a surveillance on that individual and try to identify who this individual was and try to match the composite to the purchaser of the bag.
Now the agents will have to wait and see if the terrorists walk into their trap. In New York, a terrorist group called the FALN plants a series of bombs, killing 4 people and injuring more than 60. Now they've expanded their terror spree to other American cities, including Washington, D.C. and Chicago. The FBI has been struggling to get a lead on the group. They learn that items similar to those used to make the bombs are all sold in a store in the Bronx. Agents set up surveillance. But after months of watching the store, they find nothing. Perhaps the terrorists have already stockpiled supplies. Or perhaps they have spotted their surveillance and are once again one step ahead of investigators. Months after the most recent bombing, the case takes a bizarre twist in Chicago. The police there get an odd tip. An informant reports that a man at a garage has been trying to sell sticks of dynamite to street gangs. The responding officer hears hammering and sees a man trying to break open a trunk.
Hey, stand up, put the hammer down now.
The officer also spots dynamite.
Put your hands up where I can see him.
The man says his friend stole it from an apartment that contains even more explosives. The FBI rushes to the apartment. Inside, they find more than 100 sticks of dynamite and other bomb-making materials. FBI Special Agent William Dyson.
So we not only have explosives, but we also have propane tanks. We have a lot of drilled-out wristwatches. We even have communiques.
Investigators feel confident they have discovered an FALN bomb factory.
We definitely have the FALN, there's no question about it. The problem is, who are the people connected with this apartment?
While the bomb squad renders the building safe, investigators question tenants who say no one lives in the apartment. They say they have seen 2 people going in and out, the building's owner, Carlos Torres, and his wife.
One of the things that struck us right away was this lack of sophistication here. The idea of having a bomb factory in your own building. The idea of you being the landlord of the building, the person who would have the access to all the vacant apartments, who would have the keys, just is plain stupid. So now we got 2 suspects, obviously, because not only do they own the building, but residents say they have access. They've seen them up in this apartment.
Investigators search for Carlos Torres, the building's owner, and his wife, Haiti. But they have vanished, which reinforces investigators' belief that they have finally identified members of the FALN. The FBI systematically hunts for the bomb factory fugitives. They begin with a thorough background investigation.
We pretty much followed the normal fugitive procedures, and that basically is to try to make a biography on each one of these individuals. Who are they? Where did they come from? Who are all their relatives? Make a family tree. We make a family tree on these people better than they would make one. We try to find out every person that's related to them in one way, shape, or form.
Agents interview and watch all of their known relatives and friends. But the fugitives have disappeared without a trace. At the same time, the FBI focuses on an odd document found in the bomb factory. It seems all the Chicago FALN suspects belong to the same Latino church committee. The Chicago FBI notifies New York.
We've taken a really close
FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn.
There was a suspicion that the FALN had co-opted this organization, this charitable organization, for its own purposes, to use it for travel, to use it for funding.
FBI Special Agent Don Wolford reviews records that show the Chicago suspects used church-paid tickets to fly to New York before several past bombings.
There's lots of travel back and forth, financed by the organization, because ostensibly it is supposed to be lending and giving grants for people to start neighborhood community-type Hispanic activities, like Spanish Bibles and hymnals maybe for a church in a Hispanic neighborhood, that kind of thing.
Investigators also discovered that the church committee includes a familiar face, New York pro-violence radical William Morales. They keep a close watch on Morales and all the members of the church committee, but investigators don't see anything suspicious. They don't have enough probable cause to request wiretaps or search warrants.
We've taken a lot of heat. You know, a lot of people were asking, what are you guys doing? You know, these people keep on blowing up all these, what are you guys doing?
6 months later, at the Mobile Oil Building near Grand Central Station, a bomb in an employment office kills one person and injures 8.
She came in, she put the umbrella on.
The FBI and NYPD arrive and question witnesses. A woman who takes job applications claims she saw the bomber.
She was, you know, I know who left that bomb because I saw her and I talked to her, and I cannot believe a little girl, she kept saying, a little girl like that would leave a bomb in here and blow somebody up. But I saw her, and that's who left it.
The witness says a woman came in carrying a closed umbrella that seemed unusually heavy.
She knew when she hung that device there, when it went off, somebody was going to get hurt.
The suspect took a job application.
She scratched quick a name and an address. The bomb is clicking right next to her. She wants to get out of there fast.
The suspect tried to leave, but the woman wouldn't let her take the application with her. Minutes later, the bomb went off, decapitating the man next to it. Because he absorbed most of the blast, no one else was killed.
I do know that I could recognize her because I saw her and I talked to her.
Investigators asked for the application, hoping the suspect left a fingerprint. If they could find a print, it would be their first piece of solid evidence to the identity of the bombers. The lab uncovers nothing on the front of the application. But on the back, they find what they had been looking for: a single fingerprint. The fingerprint belongs to Haiti Torres, the wife of Carlos Torres, who owned the recently discovered FALN bomb factory in Chicago. New York City police issue a warrant for her arrest for second-degree murder. After a grand jury indictment, her husband Carlos is added to the FBI's top 10 fugitive list. Now that agents have identified their suspects, they must hope for a break that will uncover where the fugitives are hiding before they strike again. A terror group called the FALN plants bombs in major cities around the country, including New York and Chicago, killing 5 people and injuring more than 80. In New York, the FBI suspects that William Morales, a pro-violence radical, is somehow connected to the group. But after months of surveillance, investigators haven't seen anything suspicious. The FBI finally asks Morales if he will talk with them. Surprisingly, he agrees. FBI Special Agent Don Wolford watches through a one-way mirror as Detective Elmer Toro questions Morales about the FALN terrorist group. But he gives them nothing.
Cool, collected, not the least bit upset, not intimidated whatsoever. I don't know nothing about nothing.
Investigators watch for clues to try and determine if it is just an act.
My position was, he's a player. He's definitely a player. Maybe he is a minor league player and he doesn't know anything. I don't believe it, but maybe. But he's a player.
Investigators continue to suspect Morales. But without more evidence, there are legal limits to how far they can go. 2 months later, Queens, New York. Firefighters respond to an explosion in an apartment and find FALN letterhead. FBI agent Wolford arrives just as paramedics take a badly injured man from the apartment. Agent Wolford believes the man may be an FALN suspect and tries to identify him. But the man's face is badly injured and his hands are nearly blown off. Inside the bare apartment, investigators find 3 small pipe bombs. Evidence suggests a 4th pipe bomb exploded while being built, which explains how the man injured his hands. Investigators discover a copying machine and papers printed with the FALN logo. They also find a large stockpile of explosives. Detective Elmer Toro goes to the hospital to try to identify the suspected bomb maker. The man's hands are so badly injured that police are unable to get fingerprints. Detective Toro tells the man that investigators will learn his identity from evidence at the bomb factory.
If you can see this.
He might as well admit his name now. But the man can't speak.
Manuel Rodrigo. I wrote a bunch of names of people that I suspected. Once we got to the name of William Morales, he moved and he agreed without saying who he was. But he basically identified himself.
Detective Toro believes they may have captured the FALN's bomb maker. Toro grills him for information about the organization. But Morales refuses to cooperate. 9 months later, Morales goes on trial for reckless endangerment and possession of dangerous weapons.
Well, Morales didn't fight. Morales claimed a prisoner of war status, no defense, which is a dream for the prosecution.
The judge sentences him to 89 years. Police take Morales to the jail ward of Bellevue Hospital to be fitted with artificial hands before going to prison. Incredibly, despite police guards in the hallway, he manages to escape. Investigators rush to Morales' hospital room.
My initial reaction was, this is just a bad joke. You know, this is just a bad, yeah, right, sure he's escaped. How could he escape? First off, he's physically unable to escape. And secondly, he's up on the 3rd floor.
There's nothing down there, it's just, we don't have him.
They find the window bars and mesh cut open.
The mesh had been spread apart not more than 6 to 8 inches, just about like this.
I mean, that's straight down.
So he had to squeeze through that hole and get out of the mesh. And then how did he get down 3 floors? And of course, coming to mind immediately was he had help.
Investigators begin to piece together what happened. Someone must have smuggled in a pair of bolt cutters.
William Morales cut himself out from the 3rd floor with his elbows, because he had no hands.
Investigators believe Morales jumped 3 floors to the ground, where waiting accomplices drove him away. The FBI and NYPD launch an all-out manhunt for Morales and alert the public and police across the country to be on the lookout. But months go by, and the manhunt turns up nothing. Then the terrorists strike again. 6 months after Morales' escape, the FALN begins bombing again in New York, Chicago, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. 1 year after William Morales' escape, just north of Chicago, Evanston police respond to reports of an illegally parked van. They radio in the license, which comes back stolen. Police decide to watch the stolen van to see if anyone comes back.
So they surveil it. I mean, they could have towed it away, but they surveil it.
A short while later, a man and woman drive up to the van and begin loading it.
Police, put your hands up! Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands! Turn around! Face away from me! Stay right where you are!
Police confront the two and find rifles. The suspects have no ID and refuse to speak, leaving police at a loss.
They can't even figure out what nationality they are. So they bring him in. So they got those two people.
A few hours later, in the same Chicago suburb, a citizen calls Evanston police to complain about a truck parked in a wealthy neighborhood. The woman says people have been coming up to the truck and climbing in the back all morning.
A police officer comes out and tries to talk to the driver.
What are y'all doing here in the neighborhood?
Why are you here? Well, I'm visiting. Who are you visiting? I'm visiting that person over there. Well, who is that person? Well, I don't know his name and all. And first, vague type of descriptions.
It all seems very suspicious. The officer glances into the truck and spots the butt of a handgun.
Gun? Put your hands.
Now he knows he's dealing with armed suspects, and there may be more of them hiding in the back of the truck.
Step out of the vehicle, sir.
Amid a rash of terror bombings, officers in Evanston, Illinois, arrest a suspicious couple. In the back of their truck, police find people with shotguns, handguns, and disguises. Officers arrest them as well. Evanston police photograph and fingerprint their prisoners.
No, I've got the list. Can you run it for
They
me?
also check their identification, but they run into a problem. The names on their IDs prove to be false. Detectives try to interview the suspects, but they refuse to talk. Sensing they are onto something big, the police call the FBI. FBI Special Agent William Dyson looks at the prisoners and immediately recognizes one as a major FALN terrorist.
I've got his wanted poster, top 10 fugitive, and I recognize him. I mean, this is Carlos Torres.
Agent Dyson also recognizes other prisoners as members of the FALN.
It was like looking at this collage that I had above my desk in the office of all these wanted people. So we have the FALN. We know we have the FALN. We're able to identify enough of them. This is the FALN.
The FBI takes a closer look at the false IDs. From past experience, the FBI knows that criminals who use fake ID often include a real address so that it can be used to function in society. Agents notice that several of the IDs have the same Chicago address. The FBI and Chicago police raid that address and find bomb-making materials and more FALN evidence. With information from the captured terrorists, agents raid addresses in Milwaukee, New York, and New Jersey. They take down more FALN safe houses. 6 years after the bombings began, a federal jury finds the captured FALN terrorists guilty of seditious conspiracy, weapons violations, interstate transportation of stolen vehicles, and other charges. But notorious FALN suspected leader William Morales still remains a fugitive.
A group of us got together.
Just before sentencing, one FALN member decides to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. He says the 11 terrorists were in Evanston to rob an armored car to finance more bombings. He also describes a meeting at a Milwaukee safe house.
They had this meeting in which they plot this thing out. And the man leading the meeting, he's got his mask on, so you can't recognize him. But he's got no hands. So immediately, everybody knew it was William Morales.
Fanatical FALN leader William Morales' hands were maimed years earlier while making a bomb. Investigators press for more information, but the cooperating FALN member doesn't know how to find Morales. Agents try a different approach and question their informant about how the FALN recruits members.
We have to know how they bring new people into the group. Once we know that, then we can go after them.
Strong activists who are ready to do.
Investigators learned that the FALN recruits from the ranks of Puerto Rican radicals. Anyone who joins must drop all political activities in order to maintain a low profile. With that pattern in mind, FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn searches through hundreds of files on Puerto Rican radicals. It's a long-shot attempt to identify the remaining FALN terrorists.
We looked for individuals that had stopped attending rallies and things like that, that had made themselves quite well known prior to that time. And we focused on them for surveillances.
More than a year passes before the FBI finally finds one suspect who seems to lead a double life.
Very, very quickly, we realize this guy's clandestine. He's doing things that's not normal.
Agents track the suspect to an FALN safe house. Based on the suspect's behavior, the FBI gets a court order allowing listening devices and wiretaps. In March 1983, 2 years after first gaining cooperation from the FALN informant, the FBI gets a break. Through a wiretap, they overhear a suspected FALN member on the phone asking a mysterious man in Mexico to come to Chicago.
He refused to come up and said, basically, why don't you come visit me? I'm having plastic surgery done. I'm in need of good identification. I can't come into the country. I'll be too easily recognized, that sort of thing.
The mysterious man says to call the same number in a week. In a huge break, investigators identify the mystery voice as that of the FALN's fugitive leader.
By his voice, we were pretty sure that it was probably William Morales.
It's the first time the FBI has heard Morales' voice since his bold escape from New York police custody 4 years earlier. The FBI traces terrorist leader William Morales' phone call to a cafe in Puebla, Mexico. Back in Chicago, the FBI is stuck. They have no jurisdiction in Mexico. Agents plan to continue listening to their wiretap and arrest Morales when he makes his plan to come back to America. But since Morales may have had plastic surgery and significantly changed his appearance, agents ask Mexican federales to secretly photograph him. FBI Special Agent Rick Hahn.
The federales went down to that coffee shop and found Morales seated at a table there.
Morales had severely maimed his hands years earlier while making a bomb. He cannot protect himself or fire a gun. The FBI warns the federales he is probably accompanied by an armed bodyguard. FBI Special Agent Don Wolford.
We told him, hey, this guy's got backup, watch it. You just can't walk up with this guy and say, in the car.
The federales don't see a bodyguard and decide to make the arrest themselves. NYPD Detective Elmer Toro.
They were not supposed to take him down, they were supposed to take photographs. And they decided to make the arrest, and William Morales, like a nice trained terrorist, he simply gave up and provided the opportunity for his bodyguard to step out of the restaurant.
The bodyguard opens fire, shooting both federales, one of them critically. The other federale returns fire, killing the bodyguard. He takes Morales into custody, but his arrest comes at a great price. The wounded federale dies on the way to the hospital. New York Police Detective Elmer Toro immediately flies down to Mexico to interview Morales and try to arrange his return.
Morales being in police custody and having killed a police officer, I'm sure was subject to some degree of torture by the federales down there.
Morales greets Detective Toro like a long-lost friend.
He was happy to see me, and he said to me, and I always remember, he says, Elmer, I want to go back with you.
Take me with you.
Detective Toro says he'll draw up the papers, and Morales promises to sign.
Sign anything. Just take me with you.
Okay, Willie.
Once Mexican police learn that Morales is going back to the U.S., they treat him better to avoid a possible scandal.
Okay.
Back at his hotel, Detective Toro calls the FBI with the incredible news about Morales.
Getting anything done in Mexico is like, forget it. But now he's talking about, I want to come back. And, you know, we're all saying, thank you, Lord. All right. Let him come back.
But it's not that simple.
All of a sudden I put the 6 o'clock news, and there is the bastard denouncing us.
Morales appears on TV, flanked by radical lawyers from Cuba, the U.S., and Mexico. He now angrily condemns America.
By this time, he's got a battery of attorneys from all over the place. He had people from Cuba, the attorneys from Cuba, very powerful attorneys. And once he was protected by these attorneys, he didn't need Elmer Toro anymore. He didn't want to come back anymore.
Detective Toro now realizes that Morales used him to gain better treatment in jail while waiting for his lawyers to arrive. In the months to come, Cuba uses its influence and money to win the release of Morales.
He's on the beach in Cuba, in Cienfuegos, Cuba, I believe. Sooner or later, Fidel Castro's government is going to go, and maybe we'll see Morales at that point.
With Morales in permanent exile and other key members in prison, the FALN's 8-year reign of terror comes to an end. The FBI and police, through dedicated investigative work and patient long-term surveillance, have defeated one of the most deadly domestic terror groups in U.S. history.